Alright, so here is my 2002 Yamaha VSTAR 1100 Classic. Obviously it's a motorcycle. It's 18 years old because it's obviously now 2020. The bike does have 65,213 miles on it. My stepdad purchased this brand new in 2002 from the local dealer, and he has put just about every last one of those miles on it. He's recently had more and more health problems and can no longer ride the motorcycle, and they were debating selling it, so because of the sentimental value this bike has, or the story behind it, I couldn't let it go to someone else, so I was going to be buying it from my parents. Again, they bought it brand new. He put every one of those miles on this bike himself, except for about the last 200 to 250 that I put on since I got it. So I know how it's been ridden its entire life. It's always been ridden very nicely. You know, it's just a day cruiser. It's not a race bike or a sport bike or anything like that. It's just been ridden really nicely. And then I rode it nicely as well and changed oil and all that stuff. And then it has also been meticulously maintained at the dealer. We've always been right on top of maintenance with oil changes, getting the tires replaced when they needed to be, that sort of thing. So you can see the bike is in very good shape for its age. So just real quick, if you got one of these bikes, you might have the same problem I do. And if you don't yet, and you're just curious what the problem is, I highly recommend that you check this before it turns into a problem. I did not know this until it happened. So I was traveling around 60 miles an hour, 55, 60, and I was starting to slow down for a stoplight. So I downshifted into fourth gear, and at about somewhere between 40 and 45 miles an hour, maybe a little more, I started to feel the rear wheel bind up a little bit and heard a whining noise out of the transmission. However, the whining noise sounded more like it was up front. I've now figured out it's coming from up here, but I guess it could still be up there. But I figured out the cause of the problem is back here. Regardless of where the noise is coming from, I have now figured out why. So I did research. I tried searching the whining noise. I couldn't find a whole lot of direct answers other than, so you take the side cover off here. There's one here that's got a little spot for the key so you can lock your little tool bag in here. So take that cover off. And then I took this other side cover off just to open everything up a little more. I don't know if you have to take that one off, but I did for convenience. And under this cover, it's held in with 4 Allen screws. You have your sensor, which is for the speedometer. So this is to tell you how fast you're going. So there's just an Allen bolt here, or a hex head, whatever you want to call it. So you take that out, but be careful that you don't do what I did, where you actually crack the plastic when you loosen the bolt. And I think what happened was the bolt was, or screw, whatever you want to call it, was kind of stuck to this metal bushing in here, or spacer, and that twisted the spacer at the same time, which is what caused the plastic to crack, would be my guess, due to its age. So I'm not sure if there's a way you can prevent that offhand, but anyway, just be wary of that. But so the main problem that you really need to know about is, obviously, if you're looking at this, you already know it's a shaft drive bike. So inside here is a universal joint, or a U-joint, whatever you want to call it. And you've got the rear drive shaft. You have what's called a mid shaft, which goes from here into the transmission. I'm not entirely sure how long that piece is. And then that meets with another drive shaft that goes through the transmission. I believe that's the one that's got the gears on it. So this part here, it might almost be easier just call it an output shaft, but I believe that Yamaha actually calls it a mid-gear or a mid-gear set. So, because you can't see in there with the camera, I've got my borescope here. I will turn the brightness up on the flashlight on it so you can see. And what I'm going to try to do is hopefully show you kind of what's going on in here. So, there you can kind of see there's a nut sitting there. Let me see if I can get this camera facing the right way so that we're sitting upright. Okay, well, anyway. Oh, that's why. My camera's actually starting to break on me. I'll have to fix that. Okay, so, anyway, as you can kind of see, there is a nut right there. And then back there, that's the U-joint, and this is what was causing my wheel to bind up on me. Luckily, I did not crash or wreck or anything. I was able to safely pull over and tow the bike home on a trailer. So what happened is there's that output shaft is what this nut threads onto, and this nut holds the yoke for the U-joint onto that shaft. So what happened here was a lot of other people were saying their nut would come loose. I'm not sure if this one did, but regardless, the entire shaft actually snapped all together. So again, I don't know if the nut was loose and that caused the shaft to snap, or if it just snapped all together. So Yamaha was known for having this problem. I've found a lot of people online that said they had exactly this problem. And when I contacted Yamaha, they tried saying they've never heard of this problem before. And then when I look up the part number, it comes up with a new part number that's superseded. And I'll see if I can show you how this binds up here. So you can see how that nut just kind of tumbles around in there like that. I know it might be a little hard to see, but anyway, you get the point there. So what happens is that nut breaks off, or it just unthreads all the way and falls off, and then the shaft breaks after that. Regardless of what happens, this can be a very dangerous situation because it can cause that rear wheel to lock up like that. So if I switch to my side view camera here, we might be able to see a little bit more of that shaft, hopefully. And there we go. So there you can see, it's a little tricky to see, but you can just kind of see where the shaft is broken right there. So if you have one of these bikes, definitely be careful of that. I'm working on getting this to the dealer. The dealer's 2 weeks out before they can look at it right now. So in a couple weeks, I'm going to bring this to the dealer, drop it off. I'm going to have them analyze that and submit what's called an out of warranty claim, which is what Yamaha told me to do if I want to try to get Yamaha to cover this. They told me there's no guarantees that they'll cover any part of it at all or anything like that. But they said that's the only thing that I can do is to try to submit an out of warranty claim. So that's what I'm going to be doing as soon as the dealer takes a look at it. Unfortunately, in the meantime, I am forced to pay for the diagnostics and analysis charges that will be associated with it until a decision is made by Yamaha as to what they want to do. If they don't fix it for me, and I have to pay out of pocket, this repair could cost upwards of $3,000 because the seat's got to come off, gas tank's got to come off, the rear wheel and swing arm, all that has to come off, and then the whole engine and transmission needs to come completely out of the frame in order for them to separate the case, get in there, and replace that shaft. And it's looking at Yamaha's website and parts diagrams. Yamaha says it was like $789 for that shaft assembly. So it's definitely not a cheap part. And I think they know about it because when you look up that part, it shows an updated part number, which tells me they changed something about that shaft that they put out a new part number. And it sounds like, reading online, a lot of other people are saying after about 2009, these bikes no longer had a shaft issue. Almost like that's when they came out with the upgraded shaft. People are saying it's a beefier shaft, it's a lot stronger, it's a different type of metal or something, I'm not sure. Which would tell me Yamaha knew something about it. They're just trying to deny it because they probably don't want to pay for it. So I've already submitted a claim with the NHTSA over this because I feel this could be a very huge safety problem when it comes to even an experienced operator on a bike like this. But someone inexperienced like myself, I've only got a couple hundred miles of ride time on it. I've been driving cars for probably 6 years now, and I've never had a crash, which has been good. But motorcycles are a whole different ballgame. They're not that hard to ride, but you know, in an emergency situation like that, if you're not as experienced with the bike, it can be harder to keep control of the bike. So what makes me nervous is the fact that, let's say I was going 70 miles an hour down the highway and the rear wheel would have locked up completely. I skid out of control, tip over, and either get run over or slam into a street sign or something and get killed in the crash. It would probably get chalked up to new rider, inexperienced, lost control. Nobody would look any further into it, when in reality something like that would have been Yamaha's fault for something that they know about. So I'm really hoping that I can get them to do something about this, and I'd like to see them put out a recall or a service bulletin or both, something to get people aware of this problem for anyone who still owns one of these bikes. I'm not sure how many are still on the road today, but it is very frustrating to know that Yamaha theoretically is aware of this problem, and there's definitely tons of documentation online. If you go look online, there's even a Facebook page for it. It only has a few hundred people on it, but the fact that there's a Facebook page for it, tells you something. So that it was definitely a common enough problem that there's enough people complaining about it, and Yamaha still hasn't wanted to do anything. So I'm going to update in a couple weeks after I bring this to the dealer and I get an answer from them as to what Yamaha will do, if anything at all. I did see somebody else say that they paid to have theirs fixed, a little under $3,000, and when they told Yamaha they were thinking of filing a class action lawsuit and had already contacted the NHTSA, suddenly Yamaha called him back a couple days later and said they would be issuing him a refund for the repairs on his bike. And sure enough, a couple weeks later, the guy said he got a check in the mail for all but $100 worth of the repair, and so he only had to pay about $100 after his refund to get the bike repaired. And to me, that seems like Yamaha was trying to sweep it under the rug and hope he wouldn't say too much about it and cause this to be an issue, because it could be very expensive for Yamaha to do something about this. So if you have one of these bikes, definitely be sure to check that if you have not already. It's a lot of work to do it because you have to pull the wheel and swing arm and all that stuff off of there. But if you have not had this problem yet, I would recommend you stake the nut, or you put some threaded Loctite on there, something to help keep that nut from coming loose. In this case, it does not look like the nut really came loose. It looks like the shaft just snapped for whatever reason. I am unsure why. But it is what it is. There's nothing I can do about it other than sit here and wait patiently until I get an answer from Yamaha. And when I spoke to one dealer about the whining noise, they tried telling me it was probably a bearing, and if it was that bearing, it's 12 plus hours worth of shop labor to replace it at $110 an hour. And then now that I figured out what's wrong, I called that dealer back, asked if they'd ever heard of the shaft problem. They said no, and they said stop doing burnouts on it, which was slightly offensive just because the fact of this bike has never once done a burnout in its entire life. It's not meant for doing burnouts. I don't even know if, maybe it can. I don't know. I've never tried. It's not exactly a powerful bike. It's just a basic cruiser. So the fact that the dealer kind of had that attitude about it, I didn't care for their attitude. So this will be going to a different dealer that's closer to me anyway to see what they can do about it. So hopefully this will take care of that and I can get something figured out. The bike has a lot of sentimental value, so one way or another I will be getting it fixed. I know it's not worth it because it's almost equal to what the bike is worth on its own, but again, with sentimental value, it's worth the repair no matter what the cost. But I'm really hoping that maybe somebody else sees this, I can save somebody else from this problem, or somebody else will come forward and report their problem if they have the same problem to Yamaha, so we can get more records of this to Yamaha, even if you've had the problem before and it's already been repaired, or you skipped it, but you did have the problem at one point. It'd be nice if you go ahead and call Yamaha customer service and let them know that you had this problem so they can put it in their system and try to do something about it. So that is all I've got for now. I will hopefully be able to update in a couple weeks as to what I find and what Yamaha does for it. Until then, check that out, be careful, and be safe.